Welcome to the Intern Whisperer. Our show is all about the future of work and innovation. Hi, everyone. My name is Isabella Johnston. The Intern Whisperer Podcast is brought to you by Employers for Change, helping hiring teams reduce employer bias and increase head and heart smart competency skill development for interns and employees. My guest today is Enrico Marcellino, who helps lead innovation for the Central Florida division of Advent Health. He has well over 2 decades of experience in healthcare, serving in different roles from video content strategy and branding process improvement to identifying how to improve and exceed consumer expectations. While I have not been a consumer, I have definitely experienced his patience and his ability to improve everything. So, our show is all about learning and technology and the future of industries and jobs. So, Enrico, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
I am so grateful that you have background in video production. So grateful. So just so our listeners know, we had a little technical difficulty and he was able to just get us through here with flying colors. Thank you so
Of
much.
course, my pleasure.
So tell us about yourself in 5 words and why those 5 words. Strategic, why?
I think that when I worked in process improvement, there was a change that happened with my brain, which helped me look at the world differently after I had exposure to methodologies about improving things and always looking for opportunities to make things better. And I think that what ends up happening is that you're living in this multiple steps ahead of what you're experiencing. So while you're having an experience, you're thinking about, okay, what's this lead to, or how can this be improved for the next step? And it just, I think that that is a strategic mindset where you're not living in the moment, you're thinking about the future.
I like that because, you know, we talk about the future of work a lot, and that's your space also. I find that that's very interesting. That's how you're defining strategy around what's current and how that impacts the future. Creative. Why creative?
Ever since I was a kid, I've been interested in art and creating things that are impactful to people and affect people emotionally. And so I felt like, when I was a child, it started with doodling, and then it transitioned into acting in high school. And exploring that a little bit. And then, when I moved to Florida as a 18-year-old, I was exposed to the entertainment industry here and became a professional actor. And then I started going to school at Valencia and UCF to learn about film production so that I could learn about what was happening on the other side of the camera. So it's always been this world that I felt very connected to, and the world of creating new things and expressing yourself to people in an artistic way, I think has always been something I've been interested in. And I've luckily found ways to transition that love of creativity into the business world, where if I'm trying to share a certain idea or concept with people, oftentimes creativity is the best way to do that.
Mm. Have you ever done improv?
Not formally. I've definitely been involved in acting scenarios where we were a little bit unscripted and were, kind of given free reign to navigate what the dialogue would be based on a situation, but not in the sense of, like going to like the improv comedy club and doing
Mm-hmm.
it that way. It's been more of honestly, like on set, once we get the script solid and done, then we start improving, our own lines and how we would, do it naturally.
React, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what play were you in? I assume it's a play. Maybe it was a film. What were you in that you think was really the most fun you ever had?
So there's a 48-hour film festival that happens every year here in Central Florida. It's actually all over the country, maybe all over the world,
Do you
actually.
mean at Enzion? That's a week long, right?
Sometimes, so no, the 48-hour film festival is this experience that happens where you go pick up a packet at a certain time. Usually, it's like 7 or 8 p.m. at night,
Oh my
and that
gosh.
packet has your main character name, it has a prop, it has a genre, and your team takes that packet. It also has a line that you need to make sure is in your film, and it's all in an effort to make sure that what you're making happens in that 2 day time period. So the packet kind of has all those guidelines, and you and your team go back and you create a film from scratch. You write the script, you shoot it, you edit it, and then you deliver it 48 hours later. And then there's a screening that happens, and it's a great experience. It's a great time. It's great for young filmmakers who are just starting out to join a team of people that do different things, like a cinematographer, a sound person, to get actors to help you, and everybody's usually doing it for free because they love acting, and
Experience,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So our when I was running our film department at Advent Health Florida Hospital back then, our team members, it was a weekend event, so we got together and we participated, and it was great because we all have kind of a well-rounded skill set of editing, shooting, writing, sound design. So it was pretty easy for all of us to parse out the responsibilities. We actually um, typically a film, no matter how long it is, has a 3-act structure. So somebody took act one, somebody took act two, and somebody took act three, and we edited those separately, brought them together. But that was probably the most fun because I was acting with my team
Hmm.
members, and we were able to create something that actually ended up doing very well in the festival. So
Wow.
it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun because I can see how it breaks a lot of sounds like a hackathon.
Yeah,
Like
for
startup
sure.
weekend or a game jam. And you're with strangers, and by the end of that time frame, you become best friends. Well,
Absolutely.
maybe best friends, but definitely it breaks down all the barriers.
Yeah, and I think that it's good to stretch those creative muscles from time to time in a way that has less structure. Because oftentimes, when you're in a corporate environment making content, you are given the parameters in which you need to stay within. Maybe it's the topic that you are going to be making something about, or it's even pre scripted for you based on something that was written in marketing materials or a campaign. So sometimes you're just kind of staying within those guardrails, and it, you're doing your best, and you're able to exercise your talent in that way. But when there's no guardrails at all, and it's whatever you can come up with, oftentimes I think you can get some really good stuff, and you can reach deep down and find some creative stuff that you maybe haven't been able to do before.
Oh my God. I could talk about this one topic for a long time, but I had no idea they did this in another community. We'll talk offline.
Yeah.
Futuristic. Okay, why futuristic?
I think that the way the world moves, as far as pace is concerned, in my lifetime, I've been able to see things really accelerate faster than, let's say, when my parents grew up. And it, for me, it's really interesting to look at what trends might predict the next thing that's coming. And when new technology comes out, it's fun for me to kind of go all in and embrace that technology and figure out how that new tool or that new platform can help me be better at what I do. And in terms of using creativity to deliver a message or present a concept, I think that it's really helpful to have those kinds of tools. Let's say AI, for instance, which is obviously very, it's a hot topic right now, and
Mm.
it's very popular, and people that are using it are finding ways to create more efficiency in their work, and I love that, and I love the opportunity it affords you to do things quickly, and I look to the future being one that you can perform tasks and create things at the speed of thought versus having to actually use your hands or use a computer to do the work. I think that you will see an acceleration of ideas and original concepts that come out when technology catches up with the human brain. We are still, I think, the quickest.
Hmm.
We have the quickest AI, the quickest intelligence, um, as far as coming up with ideas and
Right.
original content. I think that once AI gets to the point, or we have a tool that can take those thoughts and put them into actual physical form in front of us, I think that's really the future that I'm excited about.
Okay, so I'm just going to officially label you as a thought leader now. I
Thank
thought of that before, but now I'm sitting here because one of the biggest quotes that this is combined. So for me, listening to you, I'm going, AI is like a hackathon. That's what it is for us now. So the reason why maybe a lot of people are having trouble with it is because it's really making you have to go, okay, how do I speed up and do this? But you said it helps people to create something with the speed of thought. And I think that's extremely insightful. That should be the name of your book. Okay. Creating something with the speed of thought and how AI impacts your what your creativity. Like that's your book. Just so you know. I
All
don't
right,
know.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Anyway, next word, decisive, because you're weaving this all together. So it's a very well beautiful blanket that's surrounding. Yes, go.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So decisive, uh, my whole working life, I have tried to use my experience to inform my decision making. And when you build up a history of successes, I think that it helps to build confidence and it shortens the amount of time that you need to take to make that next decision. So early on, I really learned the concept of weighing pros and cons. And then when I got into process improvement, my futuristic and future casting ability got strengthened where I could predict, okay, if we do this, these three things will happen, or if we do this, these four things will happen. And is that the outcome that we want? Does that match what whoever's asking for this project is wanting or they desire? Does it match what the goals are? And so when you become good at predicting based on human behavior, based on the parameters that you're given, based on organizational structure, when you can uh, future cast the outcome, I think that it makes you able to say, okay, I'm weighed both options, and we're going to go with this one because this has the best outcome based on everything that we know today. And it became very helpful when I was leading in a creative field, because when I was leading video content strategy, you would listen to the client's desire of what they wanted to achieve, whether that be get likes on social media or have a great reaction with a television commercial. And the concept that they would give you, you would need to come up with at least a couple ideas right there in the moment. And so that comes from experience, that comes from being obsessed with content in general, and seeing a lot of different types of content that you can draw from and say, okay, I hear what you're saying. I've seen something that does this, and I think that it would be great to accomplish your goals. And then they get excited about it and be like, yeah, that sounds great. And so then you go put that into a formal pitch, and then they choose which one they want. So I think being decisive is a form of efficiency, where you're able to do things more quickly by not having to make decisions by committee, or reach out to a bunch of different people that will share the accountability if you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fully prepared to be accountable for things, to be wrong sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
own it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes you the most decisive, is the ability to say, if I'm wrong, I'm going to own that I'm wrong,
Right.
and I'm going to tell people that I'm wrong, and I'm going to apologize and tell them why I made that decision. But if you come from a pure-hearted place where you're not in it for yourself, and you're not thinking about how you can be elevated, or people can think about you as always being right or
Mm-hmm.
good, I think that makes your decisions a lot easier, because then you don't have to worry about, well, how's this going to be perceived? Because it should always be perceived as you're doing the best thing for a person, or you're doing the best thing for the company you work for.
You're at the top of the Maslow's theory because
Right.
you're into this place of being very self-aware, but self-aware of yourself and the impact you have on others, but also how that can create more self-awareness in others. That's huge. That's really very, very, it's a valuable gift to recognize,
Thank
right?
you.
So kind. Yes, you are that. And so I think it's great that you also see that about yourself, because it's the gift that gives to others, right? And just previously, I know you mentioned something about how all of this ability Experience, well, let me back it up. Experience always gives us more confidence. Agreed. Totally agree with you. And that confidence is the thing that people are always attracted to, whether it's work or in a personal setting, right? And that's really where that empathy that comes out of it creates kindness towards others. I mean, that's my opinion. I know previously you had said that you give credit to your wife. Is that still the case?
I was just thinking about her
Yeah.
as you were talking about
Yeah.
that. My empathy has grown since meeting with, working with, and being in a relationship with my wife. I think that she's the most empathetic person I know, and being an empath is not always a great thing for that person because it's hard to take on everybody's hardships.
Mm.
It's hard to take on the challenges that people are having because then they become very personal to you. um, I think that I'm not quite there. I mean, she is. So the conversations that we have, maybe sometimes I'm trying to bring her over to, as a way of self-preservation, bring
Right.
her over to kind of my,
Yeah.
compartmentalization strategy where it's like, absolutely care about what is going on in these people's lives, but don't try to connect it to what is going on in your life unless it's appropriate.
Mm.
But sometimes it just feels like she wants to feel
Hmm.
as strongly as if it was happening to her. Now that has shown me a way to love others and to really lean into their experience. And there was something that I saw the other day where it was essentially saying that some people don't have an inner monologue. There are
Hmm.
just some human beings that don't have that voice in their head that talks back to them. And when I heard that, I immediately became more empathetic to everyone around me because I said to myself, if that is true, if there are people that don't have that small voice or that, and we're not talking about like religion or anything like that, they
Not a
literally just
conscience, yeah.
right, they literally just aren't able to talk to themselves. Then if there are people like that in the world, then they probably can't think multiple steps ahead
No.
because that happens in your head when you're talking to your, okay, what is this going to, I mean, that's a dialogue that's happening. And if they're not able to do that, then you kind of got to give people a pass because they're just not wired the same way.
Right.
And I feel like, well, if that's true, then there are probably many other things that separate us as human beings that you can't lobby your expectations onto
Yep.
others. And so it really made me think differently. And so I think from a kindness perspective, I do think that it's mostly empathy, but I would really love kindness to be my personal brand that people walk away with when they have an experience with me, because I don't ever want anyone to feel like I judged them or that I thought that they were less than me. I want everybody to feel like they are above me and that I'm here to serve and I'm here to make their experience as good as it can possibly be.
Um, you've heard of servant leadership, I'm
Mm,
pretty sure, right? And so those principles are deeply rooted in Christ in many ways. And that was my dissertation topic for my PhD. I haven't written it yet, but it's there. And I see that that model in the case studies, and when it's implemented in a business world, it actually changes a culture. It changes the culture. It makes people feel, believe, not feel, we'll say feel, believe, and that they are heard, they are seen, they are empowered. It does everything.
yep.
So, and it makes the company, the revenue go off and then off the charts, in a positive way. It also helps when it comes time for seasons of challenge where you go, okay, well, now what do we do? So everybody decides. In one case study, everybody went, well, let's all just take a pay cut because we don't want to lose anybody from our team. Our team's awesome. And so when they did that, they were able to ride through a recession in one of the case studies, and they came back even stronger.
Yeah, I think servant leadership, thankfully, has started to become more mainstream in what's being taught to young leaders. Um, the At the core of servant leadership, and one of my favorite books that I read was Lead Like Jesus, and it
Mhm.
was basically, taking some core leadership tenets from his life and how he served. And he obviously is the model for servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the core of what is important about that, if you walk away with one thing about what servant leadership means, it means to me leading people as an individual. I think that there's a very old school that hopefully is sunsetting itself mentality of leadership that is to choose the way that you are going to lead and then prescribe that leadership model to everyone underneath you.
Mm.
And I think that that day hopefully is ending, because if you lead people individually, I think you get the best performance, because people are individuals. We just talked about what might separate one individual from another. So whereas some people might thrive in an autonomous kind of leave me alone and let me do my thing environment, there's other people who really strive in a structured environment where they're given tasks and they can work through those tasks and be given a next list of tasks. So that's always where I've tried to lead from, a place of, identifying what strengths and opportunities there are in an individual, and then really leading them to promote their strengths and work on their opportunities. So I think servant leadership is the way to be a successful leader. And it might not be. There are people who are professional leaders.
Mm-hmm.
They go through a track and they climb the ladder in a way that is they will become the top level leader, and they learn leadership principles to get there. They haven't necessarily stayed in one area and mastered that area before going to the next level. Now, from a generational perspective, I think that the millennials typically fall into the master and move up model. That's just what I've seen. I think that at least in our company, the millennial generation is the highest number of leaders that we have in the organization. We have some Gen Z, we have some um, X. I think X is probably the second biggest, and then we've got some boomers as
Mm-hmm.
well that obviously are been with the organization a long time. They're at the top of the leadership chart. So as I'm really interested, as we start to see a change in leadership,
Mm-hmm.
as people retire, as people move on, and millennial and X generations get into those top leadership roles, how they will lead differently,
Mm-hmm.
and how they will view leading teams, and whether that will lead to more prosperity for the company, um, or at the very least, if we lean into getting back to basics and really focusing on the things that matter.
Mm. Yes. I'm pretty sure you've read some of Robert Greenleaf's work.
I have not.
Okay, so he is actually, that was one of the books, the author that was given to me. He's touted as one of the originators of servant leadership. Now, I go with you. It's Christ, God and Christ. That's the Jesus girl for me. But Robert Greenleaf took what was those same core principles and he turned them into something that was more palatable in the world of work. And so that's why he's recognized as this. So I'll give you that one, Robert Greenleaf. You go look him up.
Okay.
He has a whole wealth of strategy and books that are all focused on servant leadership and how it's used in the working place. I've got almost all of these books, and one of my mentors from when I was at Rollins College, it was Thaddeus Seymour Sr. He knew Robert Greenleaf and he had a book that was autographed by him. And he gave me that book.
Oh,
And I went,
wow.
wow, this was a big
That's
deal.
special.
So I have an autographed book. I'm happy to loan it to you. Yeah, I know it's in good hands if that's what you would like. But I have all of those books. And there is a place called the Greenleaf Servant Leadership. They have a conference, but it's an organization, and you can join that organization, and then they help instill those principles in there. Advent Health does an excellent job of instilling that same culture in there. I know that's part of why you love that place.
Yeah, for sure. Our differentiator, I think, in the a very crowded community of healthcare companies, is our mission, which is extending the healing ministry of Christ. And so we have identified the core principles that Christ taught, how he behaved towards others, especially those who maybe weren't considered, who were considered the least of these.
Yeah.
And we have tried to kind of model the way that we serve the community in that way.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any better example of how to do that well than Christ.
Yeah, I agree. When I was in my MBA program, somebody said, "Well, what book do you think is the best business book?" And I said, "The Bible."
It's a
Honestly,
good
I mean,
answer.
it tells you everything, how to manage your money, how to save, how to be, good to employees, how to be a good spouse, how to just be a nice person. It's just like that's the model, that's the book. So, yeah. Anyway, so let's hear about your personal story. Where did you go to school? How did you get launched? You mentioned that you went here to Valencia College, so you covered some of that, but how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah. So I did start my kind of AA journey here at Valencia College and quickly maneuvered into a film production pathway. I know that Valencia has a very strong film program
Thank you.
here and had some great professors that gave me the right foundation. I'll never forget at the time that I was going through classes. There was an opportunity to kind of edit yourself into a film, and so you would kind of pull footage from a film and then you would record yourself in place of whoever the character was you were replacing. And to think back on that experience, I know it was awful, the thing that I made, and it was and I got a lot of great tips without being discouraging, and it really gave me this sense. It was the first time I was trying to do this. It was before I had ever done it professionally, and while acting was very comfortable for me because I'd been doing it since I was a kid, the film production part was all new. And it gave me this idea that I could do it. And I think that eventually that led to, when I went to UCF, I continued to pursue film and learned a lot about writing. They have a great writing program there. And I also participated in a lot of the short films that they have as part of their directing track and also their master's program. So it was great to interface with the people there, and I still have connections to this day from that program. One of them works at Advent Health. He was actually my first hire when I got into the video production department. So
That's quite a compliment,
yeah,
too.
he's a super talented guy, Eric Thompson. He's absolutely brilliant, and we had a couple classes together, and he was just this really funny, kind of understated guy, but his content was wonderful. His sense of humor, we were very aligned in that way, and so he was a great person to have because when I came into the department, everyone had transitioned out of it, so there's really nobody there to make video content. So I grabbed him, and so it was kind of the two of us that were just making content for the first couple months, and then we started to slowly add people. But he was a great person to build the department with, and so now
He's
he's
no
running.
longer there?
No,
Oh,
he's
great.
running all the video content production for our partnerships. So anything from NASCAR to Disney to the Bucks, like he works with all of those different partners, and he's a direct connect to them. And so a lot of respect from those different suppliers for Advent Health because of the type of content that he's creating. So I think that in terms of an education, Valencia and UCF played a big part in educating me on how to do film production in a professional way. And I saw very, very little difference between the professional sets that I was on, where I was getting paid for being an actor, and the student films that I was on. There was very, very little difference because of how, the professionalism that they were
Mhm.
teaching. It was like, not only this is how you use the equipment, but this is how you behave on set. And so it was so nice to have that, very little difference and see the alignment in what these students were learning and how they were going to go right into the industry and be able to pick it up immediately. So
I agree with you. I've had really good experiences with interns that come from Valencia as well as UCF. And I'm very grateful for both of those schools for, doing such a good job with the talent that we have here in Orlando, Florida. So, Advent Health, how'd you get there?
yeah, so I went to it was Florida Hospital prior to 2019. So that was where I got my first job in registration. It's more of an entry level department. It's the first kind of the first area that a patient will go to before they get outpatient testing done, before they're admitted, before they go into the ER. I mean, it's become, I think, a very different experience from like what is required because of technology. You know, like in the ER, we have handprint, you know, kind of
Mhm.
registration now. So you just put your handprint, they know exactly who you are. So
Wow.
it's really cut down on the amount of time that you have to interface with somebody before you get to your care. But when I was in that department, I started at Winter Park. And is a very small community hospital at the time. It's expanded and become this great hospital that serves that community. But when I was there, it was very tiny. It was only about 5 desks that had registration folks for the whole hospital. So what I learned there is that it was important for everybody who the patient sees first to set the tone for the rest of that patient's stay. Oftentimes, the first initial experience they have is the one that that they remember, and the one that creates the rest of their experience, how they feel about the organization. So really tried to lead with kindness. I really tried to make sure that it was a seamless process, and then made sure to transition them on to that next level of care with an appropriate handoff, and not, all right, go down the hall to your next step. So it was really important to start there. And then I moved from there into our process improvement department, which gave me exposure to all types of areas in the organization. We worked in a lot of clinical areas like nursing units, trying to create efficiency in those departments where they could see patients with more valuable time, and maybe take away some of the busy work that wasn't necessary, or that we could transition to somebody else, and give them more valuable care time with the patient. So projects like that were very interesting to see how we could affect change as a non-clinical department, as a person who's not a nurse or doctor. um, but also, like I said, it changed the way that I looked at things, where there are steps to kind of everything, in just a small example, the way you put your garbage can or your garbage bag in your garbage can,
Yes.
the if you have the ones that have the straps that come out to tie, I make sure to put them on the right and left side of the garbage can, because when I pull it out, I want to just be able to pull those straps
Yeah, it's
versus.
intuitive, right?
Right. And so that's, step two of a process. And that's just how my brain is wired now. And so when I experience getting coffee, or I experience, going to a movie, there are steps in that process that I'm kind of analyzing and saying to myself, like, how could this be improved? Does this person who's serving me, do they look like they're having a good time, or do they look frustrated by having to do this thing that seems like you could probably eliminate it, or you could probably give it to the next person down the line? And that's just always how my brain is working.
I love this whole thing that you're saying because you started with where it came from at the very beginning when we began talking about your 5 words. You're becoming more self-aware and you go, "Oh, it's not all about me. It is always all about other people." That's the first line from the purpose-driven life, right? First line. That had a huge impact on me. And so then as you continue, this is what I'm seeing about you. As you continue to get more experience and more confidence, and through working with an employer that does focus on others, that trait is becoming more and more instilled in you so that you're everything we do should be about problem solving. And then it becomes less about us and it's more about the customer experience, the wife experience, the kid experience, right? Everybody. And you had said something here that was really impactful too, that the part of the training at Advent Health, or when it was Florida Hospital, was that first moment that you meet a patient impacts the rest of their day. That's a lot of power. And I don't think people understand that.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
honestly. And I think that if and I think you hit the nail on the head. That we have four core values in the organization that are, keep me safe, love me, own it, and make it easy. Those are kind of the four things that we teach everybody of they always need to have that in the back of their mind. Keep the
It's
patient
Maslow's
safe.
theory, right?
Yeah. And for me, make it easy is the whole ball game. I think that you make sure that people are safe by making their experience easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they have an easy time, whether it be navigating or having a test done, that is going to increase their safety. If there's a mistake that happens, you want to own that mistake,
Right.
and that makes it easy for the person who found the mistake. Like, you don't want to put more work on that person
Mm-hmm.
because you did something or somebody else did something. You want to just own the mistake, fix it,
Mm-hmm.
and then move on so that it's easy for whoever brought it to your attention. And then loving people, I think making things easy is a manifestation of that. I mean, if you make everyone else's life easier, then that is an expression of love.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you hit the nail on the head. If you make it easy for people, that's the whole thing.
So go through those 4 steps. Keep me safe.
Keep
What's
me
the
safe,
second?
love me,
Okay.
make it easy, and own it. So own it is obviously the service recovery piece of it. Not assigning blame when someone brings something to your attention, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
If you walk through the hospital or through any of our different areas and you see a piece of trash on the ground, you don't try to find who threw the trash on the ground or who dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
You pick it up,
Just
you
pick
put it
it
in the
up and throw it
garbage.
away. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
If there's somebody that's lost in the hallway, you don't tell them to go to the place where they'll give you directions because it might be behind you,
Right.
but you just take them. Like, if you know
Yeah.
how to get there, take them, or take them to the next step where they can find what they're looking for. And then, if you want to go the extra mile, call whoever is their destination and let them know, hey, so and so's running late because they were lost. We
Mm-hmm.
had to get them there. So again, it all comes back to make it easy for people. And I think that extends to when you're walking in a parking lot, try to hug the edges of the cars and don't walk in the middle of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a shopping cart, put it in the
Oh my
area
God.
the area that shopping carts go. Or, I mean, if you have time and you're able and you want to get some extra steps in, just push it all the way in.
Yeah.
I think that those are little things that you can do to make people's life easier, that may go unnoticed, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And it's totally fine if no one ever acknowledges it. But if you can do it, it becomes a superpower. And
I
you should
agree.
always exercise those superpowers, whether people are thankful for them or not.
Yep. I collected as a fundraiser shopping carts in a Walmart during Thanksgiving weekend. And I went, I will never leave a shopping cart behind. And I sit there and I go in a parking lot and go pick them up, get them out, because there is somebody that's paid to do that. But if we all did that,
Right. And sometimes you see them with, 20 carts that they're trying to push through. And that's, I mean, if you think about,
ridiculous.
it's creating traffic, it's
Yes.
creating challenges for people trying to back out of their spot. It's creating a challenge for that person
Yeah.
because it's hard to, and then once they get it in there, they have to piecemeal those carts in. So it creates
Yes.
a little bit of a traffic jam at the door for people coming out. So all of those things, people don't realize the downstream impact that their small choice might
Mm-hmm.
have. And so I think looking for ways to make things easy for people is a I think it's a fun way to go through life.
I agree with you. And because when you choose to own it, even if it wasn't your mistake, you go, well, you know what? That's a problem. I didn't do this, but I'm going to fix it. It makes you stand out as a person that can solve problems, that's not afraid of failure, that's not afraid of ramifications that could come
Yeah,
from, well, it's messed up. Did you do this? Yes. And I'm going to make it right.
right.
That's integrity.
Well, and I talked about if you're coming from a pure-hearted place,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you need to fear ramification,
Mm-hmm.
because really when it comes down to like how what will happen if a mistake is made, oftentimes the really bad stuff happens because the decision was made in a bad way. The decision was made because it was self-serving. The decision was made because it was looking out for yourself instead of for the key stakeholder, the client, or whoever it might be. But if you're always coming from a place of, you can talk about, like, here's the path of the decision and
Mm-hmm.
why it was why I made it this way, and I was trying to do the best thing for, then it just becomes, okay, this was just a series of things that maybe happened that lined up to have a negative outcome. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was just one of those things. Like, you can plan an event that is, the best event ever, and then a hurricane comes and the
Mm.
event gets canceled. Well, do you say, oh, all the money that was spent planning that event and all the money that we lost for whatever reason, that has to go on the person who planned it? No, you say,
No.
okay, they were trying to do the best that they could. A hurricane came, those are just one of
Yeah.
those things. And so I think that's where it is, where it's like, if you are always coming from that pure-hearted place, then
Mm-hmm.
people will always understand why you make the decisions that you do.
Mm-hmm. Favorite type of movie and what, why?
I have, as I've gotten older, gotten into like biographies, and the ones that are still more entertainment than they are
Mm-hmm.
historically accurate. For instance, like an Oppenheimer. It was super interesting to see that story done in that way, because it made me go down a rabbit hole of what actually happened. And I think that stories or movies um, that spark curiosity or help you learn something that you didn't know before, even beyond just watching the movie itself,
Mm-hmm.
going down a rabbit hole and looking up different things about the trial of Oppenheimer, and why politically all of that might have happened. It just teaches you more than just the experience of watching the movie. But I would say that that sci-fi is probably, I mean, it's kind of a little bit of sci-fi because of the content of that movie, but sci-fi has become probably my favorite genre. And it's probably because of the future casting that sci-fi movies do. I think Minority Report is probably a really accurate representation of what our future probably looks like. More individualized marketing, um, but also done in real life, where it's happening in front of you rather than on your mobile device, which, I mean, that marketing is happening already. But there are things for movies that I think have predicted the future pretty accurately. Back to the Future 2 was one of the first movies that showed teleconferencing, and now that's commonplace in our world. Um, and then 2001: Space Odyssey, we saw the perils of AI
Mm-hmm.
and what AI could become.
Yep.
So it's a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I this weekend I watched The Truman Show. For whatever reason, it was on, and I watched it, and that has become a real show on
Yeah.
Prime. It's called Jury Duty, with James Marsden, where they took a guy and had him in jury duty, and he was the only one who did not know that it was a show. And they had multiple cameras, and they were filming his reactions to things, and he thought he was going through a real life scenario, but really he was the focus
It
of this
was all
show.
orchestrated.
So, and it's exactly the Truman Show. And
Mm-hmm.
so while we probably watched that movie back in whenever it came out and thought this could never happen,
Right.
it did. Like, we've already done it. We've already gotten to the point with technology and hidden cameras and the ability to orchestrate life around a person. That, I mean, that takes a lot of
That is
planning.
everything that is going on Facebook. I honestly have a few people that I like to follow, and they put their whole life out there, and I go, oh, it's entertaining, and I know it's scripted, but I also have seen them when they're like really, what I believe they're really angry. There's like this husband and wife, and they have, I think, 5 kids, and it's just adult kids, and it's hysterically funny. But it's also, I believe it's something, I was thinking about it this morning and went, gosh, when these kids, when their parents pass, they have these wonderful memories of something they created with their parents, but they'll remember them as doing this as a family.
Yeah.
And that, that's cool. Not everybody wants to have their life on camera, though. I don't. So,
Yeah, I think that maybe 10, 15 years ago, building your personal brand became something that everybody was encouraged to do.
yeah.
With social media becoming a platform that you could monetize and you could make money off of, people really started to lean into, you have to figure out what version of you want to
Mm-hmm.
present to the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that really took off in a way that, and I'm in no way bad mouthing social media, but I think that people chose either to be their most authentic self. So
Yeah.
you might have people that overshare
Yeah.
on social media, or people leaned into being the
Scripted.
the scripted, most glam version of themselves, which I think that that can lead to opportunities. It can build an idea of who you are, a picture of success that people will look up to, and you can become a mentor. You can become a thought
Mm-hmm.
leader by just doing that, by having the air of everything is great. I mean, there are businesses that will let you take a picture in front of a Learjet to pretend that you're flying private, and those are the types of things that come out of this effort to present your life in a way that is maybe not truthful, and it's not the most
Supposed to be
authentic.
inspiring,
It's
right?
supposed to be inspiring, which it's a if it's a business move and it's marketing, I think we can all say, okay, I kind of get a pass on that. But if it's being presented as real life, then it becomes a challenge. And I think,
Yeah.
we've seen what, pushing the truth can lead to. It can lead to just, well, I can say anything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's true or not. If I get enough people to believe it, it becomes true, or a
Yeah.
version of the truth. And I don't think we used to say that phrase, version of the truth,
Yeah. Well,
before,
what was that report? Tom Cruise movie? Oh no, Jack Nicholson. You don't want the truth.
oh
What?
yeah, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth. Whatever that movie was. I didn't ever see it, but I know that's a very
A few
famous
good
line.
men.
Yeah, a few good men. Yeah, you can't handle the truth. Yeah, because most people, I think that they can't handle the truth about themselves. They're fine with accepting it about others, but not maybe about themselves.
Well, and I think if you're surrounded by these uber successful images of what people's lives are like, it leads to whataboutism. It leads to, I need to be doing that. And my
Mm-hmm.
wife is a travel advisor, so she plans travel, and we, as part of that, we travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we have noticed that there's, whenever people see their friends or their family members traveling, there's this inner expectation of, well, I should be able to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a, you don't know how they got there. So we meet a lot of influencers in
Yeah.
our travels that are there for free.
Right.
And so there was no money exchanged from a compensation perspective. They just got a free trip. So while it looks like they're making a living traveling, the truth is that they have probably paid for a plane ticket to
Mm-hmm.
get to the cruise that was free,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to get an Uber that they paid for. They had to buy, an excursion or whatever. So they're really spending money for this free experience, but it's marketing
Mm-hmm.
that they're living this amazing lifestyle. So if you don't know the truth about how somebody got to do
Right.
what they're doing, then the whataboutism can become dangerous,
Yeah.
because it's like when I was in my early 20s, if I saw people traveling or going on cruise, I didn't have any money. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about, I should be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I'll do that one day.
Right.
And so I'm in my 40s now, and I'm able to do that, thankfully. But it's not something that I ever felt like I needed to do because somebody else was doing it. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, like, we, for whatever reason, we have an opportunity to do this, we're going to go do it. And we can. But we wouldn't, stretch beyond, the limits of what we could do because, well, so and so is doing this. And it's like, good for them. I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy for them.
What impact would you like to be remembered for in your life? Before you answer that, I'm going to tell you, you had an impact already. So when you came in, we were trying to problem solve what's going on here. And you said, well, would you like to test the audio? And that's when we discovered nothing was working. And we probably spent 20 minutes trying to figure it out when I went, oh, yeah, I've got these pictures of what it's supposed to look like. And it took this combined effort, and you never made me feel stressed. As a matter of fact, you took that stress off. And then you showed me, okay, so upper thirds, and you said eyes here. And I went, oh, nobody showed me that. So you've already had this huge impact to make my day a really great day already. So I want to thank you for that. So now you can go back. What impact would you like to be remembered for having in your life?
Well, that's very kind of you to
Yeah.
say that. I think that along those same lines, I
Yeah.
want to definitely make things easy for people, solve problems. I think that that is my currently, that's probably what my wife thinks is my superpower, is problem solving and finding things. She said if I was a
Mhm.
superhero, I'd be the finder. Um, because just as an example, when she was a child, and she lived in Brevard, the zoo that is there did a campaign where they had the school children, when she was in kindergarten, make bricks, custom bricks that they were going to put down in the zoo, like
Yeah,
along the
that's
walkway.
cool.
And so there's thousands of these bricks there. And the first time she ever took me to the zoo in Brevard, she told me about it as we walked through the front entrance. And she said, I have a brick, and that's what all these like things on these bricks are. And I said, have you ever found your brick? She's like, no, they don't tell you where it is. It's just somewhere in the zoo. I
Yeah.
said, okay. So I just started glancing down at the ground as we were walking, and I was like, it's right there. And
And you found it.
it said LP, and it had a little palm tree that she used to draw when she was a kid. And she just like looked up at me incredulously and said, "How did you find it?" I said, "Well, those are your initials." And
Yeah.
I figured like that little palm tree is probably something you drew. And she said, that is my brick. So when we first started dating, she had been missing her eyeglasses for probably 6 months. And I found them underneath like a cabinet
Oh,
and
wow.
within, I think, 2 days. And so it was, um, it's fun for me to help
Yeah.
people and solve their problems. I will say that my wife is teaching me where it you need to figure out if it's appropriate for you to try to solve a problem or to be a good listener. And you think that you get to a certain age where you know it all or you know how to behave
Yeah.
in every situation, but she's still teaching me things that are extremely valuable. And I
I'm going to tell you, that's a thing about men. I read this in a book too. Men like to wear their problem solving hats. And so many times when women talk, you go, oh, well, what about this and this and this? And we go, no, I just need you to listen. So your wife is right. We don't need you to solve all the problems. We just want to know that you're a good listener. And that's another valuable form of communication, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that what I've heard from her is that the listening part is the best expression of caring.
Yes.
And so, in my effort to be kind and make people feel loved, I've really tried to lean into that, where it's knowing when to put the hat on and when to leave it off, and just be a good listener and show people that you care. So I think that it's what I would like to be remembered for is just making people feel loved and cared for,
Mm.
showing up when it counts, and making sure that they feel acknowledged and thanked for their effort. One thing that I really tried to do as a leader was when I was leading a video team was when I got a chance to thank my team publicly, I would thank them for individual things
Yes.
that were really meaningful to the project. And I would do that at the end of a shoot every time. I would say, thank you so much for the way that you ran the camera. Thank you so much for the way you broke down the lights and set up for the next scene so quickly. Thank you so much for keeping us on schedule. I would always pick a certain thing versus a blanket thank you to a person, because I think it's more meaningful and it shows that you
Yes.
noticed.
Yeah.
So that's something that hopefully is part of that brand that I'm trying to build.
So we're going to take a break and acknowledge Cat 5 Studios, and we will be right back.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.
Okay, so in the second half of our show, Enrico's going to talk about the future of jobs and industries in 2030. So, what do you think the world's going to look like as to your industry and potential jobs?
I'm excited about the healthcare industry and the impact that new technology and software will have on it, especially in the way that nurses will have an easier time treating patients. I think that there's a lot of great solutions that are starting to come out that really focus on the type of work that is time consuming
Mhm.
and necessary. But if you could take it off their plate, it would give them more time back with the patient. And ultimately, I think that clinicians want more time with the patient, and then they want more time back for themselves. So they don't want to be staying, past when their shift ends. And, oftentimes that is due, if they do, that's due to having to follow up on certain
Chart.
things and chart and make notes and things like that. So if we can implement technology that starts to take some of that stuff off their plate, I think that they're going to have a much better time. I think that patients are going to really feel that, and the conversations that they have with their clinicians are going to be more meaningful, and they're going to feel like they've gotten more time with their caregiver. The other thing I think is really interesting about healthcare is that it's something that people are going to always need,
Hmm.
um, but we also need to focus on how people are changing the way that they take care of themselves. So I think that there's been a big push recently into fitness with CrossFit. And there's definitely things that have come out where there's documentaries and shows about competitions, and it's really created a culture of fitness and focus on health and wellness. There's been so many different brands that have launched that focus on nutrition over the last few years, especially post COVID. And I think a lot of it is paired with this idea of making it easy. So instead of having a meal, you have a meal replacement. Instead of taking your vitamins, you have a shake. Instead of having to make your food, you get your food delivered and it's already pre-made for you, just heat it up. So it's in an effort to have people not have to spend so much time taking care of themselves. It's something they can just quickly check off, and they feel good about, okay, I'm doing the right thing for myself. So we as healthcare providers need to look at how that will trend over time and how the needs of our patients might change. So, while we're combating, I would love to think of a time where we wouldn't need to worry about diabetes or obesity or anything like that, because the world in general will just get very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's in our future. It's probably not in the very near future, but how would we need to change the way that we provide healthcare in a healthier world? We know that today women are the prime decision maker in the household, so we really focus on women and in terms of marketing and advertising. But in terms of healthcare, women still have needs that kind of go unmet or are difficult to navigate. Any woman that's ever had a mammogram probably wonders why a man would create such a torture device for a test that they have to have, every so often, and once they hit a certain age. Men, when they have to have a prostate exam, like, why is that such a uncomfortable process to go through? So it's things like that, where things that have just been accepted for the longest time. I really think that technology and people that want to create solutions and make it easier for patients will start to come up with solutions that we will need to embrace. And I think the one thing I'm most excited about, and it's happening in other countries, is this like full day where you get a battery of tests and you find out kind of a baseline for where you're
Right.
at, from a cancer perspective, from diabetes, for all these different things you get tested for, that you can then go back home and then follow up with your physician or schedule an appointment with a specialist. I think that is a space that we as Americans need to move into from a healthcare perspective. And I know that some companies have created pods
Mm-hmm.
that they want to put on every street corner to do this. And that's just really exciting for me, because as a fairly, active, independent person, I think putting the control in my hands, my healthcare, is what I desire, versus having to jump through these like pre-prescribed hoops where, okay, if you need to have a blood test done, you need to have an appointment with your primary care physician. And it's like, well, it's my blood. Like, why can't I just say I would like to know my levels of this?
Mm-hmm.
So it's things like that where I think the future will make it easier for patients.
You watched Black Mirror, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Black Mirror, they had a pod where somebody went in and they found out, oh, you're going to be dying. You're dying like now, and all of that. And I went, that's where it can be a little scary, because we're talking about technologies. Um, the Witt House, which is also out at Lake Nona. Have you been there?
Mm-mm.
You got to go. It's a self-guided tour. It is the house of the future. When I remember these three things about the Witt House, WHIT, it has in the bathroom, it has when you take a shower, it's got particles that just cover you with sunscreen when you're taking your shower. So when you go outside, you shouldn't have to worry about that.
Nice.
When you use the toilet, it actually is measuring your pH levels, everything about your urine and your other waste, and it can tell you, oh, you need to go get a colonoscopy. When you brush your teeth, the toothbrush could tell you if you had cavities and it was time to see a dentist. That was just in the bathroom.
That's awesome.
In the kitchen, it had this giant island so that everybody would gather around it. And you were literally using a hologram to be able to go, I want this recipe. And then you're able to just create it. And the whole island becomes the stove or whatever it is that you need it to be. It was amazing.
That's cool. No, I'll make an appointment to go
Yeah, so
as
you
soon as
have to
possible.
go. You have to go and see that for sure. Lake Nona is the place of the future, and I know in our previous conversations that is where Advent is building something that's going to be. I think you called it the gym of something, or this.
I mean, it's gonna.
There was a
We're
name.
calling it the hospital of the future. Our
Yeah.
desire is to create a destination for people to come and not only feel like we're focusing on just their illness, but focusing on their wellness.
Hmm.
We have this, tagline "Feel Whole," which is
Mm,
our desire for all of our patients, and that goes beyond just treating a symptom. That is treating the whole person and making sure that when they go back to the life that they had before they had whatever condition or challenge rise up, we want to get them back to that where they felt whole, where they felt meaning in their life, and where they had joy. So, Lake Nona, the hospital that we're building out there, will our desire is to create something that is state of the art in every way, that feels like you're experiencing healthcare differently than you have before, and that feels easier to access than previous healthcare experiences. So we know that people don't like going to places if it's really challenging to get to where you're going.
right.
Now that may be because of navigation, that may be because of the size of, let's say, a campus, makes it challenging to get there, and it's sometimes a deterrent to going. So you're just
Mm,
like, I don't even want to deal with all of that.
right.
And so we heard that, and I think that you'll see more of like a retail style model
Hmm.
versus what you might have been used to. But we're excited about the community of Lake Nona, and to your point, I mean, it's very futuristic out
Yeah.
there. It's forward thinking. So there's a lot of different places that have already been established there that are state of the art, that are great to learn from and to model off of. And so we're very excited about what the Lake Nona campus will become. We've had an ER out there for a long time that has helped us learn about what the needs of the community are, and so we know that that community is growing, and we're excited about serving in a new
Mm,
area.
that's amazing. Really love that. What do you think? Well, we actually covered a lot of this already. I usually talk about AI and the impact that it has, but we covered that in the beginning part of the show. What do you think the positive impact could be of augmented reality or virtual reality or AI? I know that I'm pretty sure your hospital is exploring all of those types of future forward ways of dealing with helping people.
Yeah, for sure. I think that what excites me is the application of new ways to experience things. In terms of VR or AR, the application for patients has already been done in different ways. I know that, for instance, not necessarily with us, but with the VA, they have piloted doing giving people a headset while they're waiting for a test that might be a stressful type of test. For instance, an MRI is stressful to a lot of people, so much so to the point where people have to become sedated if they can't handle the stress of having
Mm,
that test done. Now, me personally, I fall asleep during an MRI, so I don't want the listener to feel like all MRIs are terrifying. I just think that sometimes it can feel claustrophobic, and the noise can just be stressful. So what they've done is they've given them a headset to experience something in full 360 experience that has led to much less sedation needed for patients. So in other words, if a patient was nervous, they put on the headset, they scuba dive for 20 minutes while they're waiting, and then when they take the headset off, they're like, I'm good to go. Like, this was a bucket list. I know with my COPD, I will never be able to scuba dive. So this was something that I felt like I just experienced for the first time, and I can check it off of my bucket list, and I'm super calm and I'm ready to go have my test done. Versus, if they're just waiting there anticipating the test for 20 minutes, it can lead to even more increased anxiety and stress. So I think that that application is fantastic. There's a company called XX that has put that type of technology into operating rooms
mm,
where they have somebody wear a headset and they see the tools that are required for the surgery animated in front of them. in real time in the space that they need to go. So in terms of setting up an operating room table for all the things that are needed, surgeons have preferences of how they want their tools to be laid out. It also is surgery dependent. So the having those preloaded preferences in the program and then seeing them on the table gives no doubt to the person setting up the room of where things should go. So they know that it will be perfect every single time. And that has really cut down on the amount of time required to set up for an OR, for an operating room for surgery. But the other thing that people don't really think about is if, let's say, you open up tools for a right-handed surgeon and the surgeon is left-handed. Well, that everything needs to be broken down
Has to be
and it has to
reset.
be reset, and that takes, maybe an hour to do.
Mhm.
So those are the types of things that will lead to delays in surgery. And when you have it there in front of you, picture perfect, and you know that those are the surgeon's preference for this particular type of procedure, then you know you're going to get it right because the surgeon is the one who put in those preferences. So there's no way that they're going to ask for something that's not going to be there because
Mhm.
they loaded it in. So that's, I think, an exciting use of AR and VR in the healthcare setting. And I know that there's even more that's coming. I mean, there are different applications where we'll overlay things during a surgical procedure so that you can see what's happening maybe behind an organ. And those are, I think those are exciting things that have entered into the healthcare space.
I agree. If they have something, because I am terrified of needles, watched way too much and drawing blood, watched way too many vampire movies when I was a kid, and it has impacted me. And so when I go in and they have to draw blood, it really, I've never had an experience where it hurt, but psychologically it is huge. And I literally have to lay down and they have to almost strap my arm down to help me just keep it straight because I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I know for that. I went, if they could do something where it could be like, take that fear away from me, that would be everything because then I wouldn't care anymore. Yeah.
I don't know if this would make you feel better, but I have seen that they have machines so it's robots that do the blood draw, and it uses technology where so there's a machine that today
Yeah.
phlebotomists can use that will do basically like a live ultrasound on your arm to see where the veins are
Uh-huh.
so that there's no guesswork. It's like I can see it there, boom,
So
done.
I don't have to squeeze the ball,
You
do
still
all
have
of
to do
that.
all the same
Okay.
things. It just makes them. So for some people, they have small veins like mine. If I just squeeze my arm, my vein here is huge. It comes
I
up
always
and
have
it's
bruises.
easy. Yeah, my father's same way. He has to tell them like this is where. I mean, he almost wants to get a tattoo of a dot where he's like, just put it
Yeah.
right there and you're good. But
Yeah.
they've had to for him and for instance, they have had to bring in that machine and look at his arm so they can see the veins in real time and get it. So the AI robot has that technology built into it. So you're essentially just putting your arm into the machine. And then the one I saw, they have like a glass window where you can look. I would say that it's probably better for you to put your arm in there. They strap down your wrist and then you don't see any of it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's just like, boop, it goes in. You're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's happening. I think it's the anticipation
It is.
that
It
is
is. It's horrible.
stressful to people. Like for me, I like to watch it go
Yeah.
in.
You told me your story before the frog and blood everywhere in the room. And I went, oh no.
So yeah, I've drawn my own blood, and
Oh
I
my
think that
God.
that probably made me not afraid of
Yeah.
what it would feel like because I didn't do a great job.
Yeah.
So um,
Oh,
so
that
I
was
think
such a crazy story.
it's different for everybody. My mom, she's been both arms, multiple times. My wife, same thing, like smaller veins. So it's just hard. I mean, in phlebotomists, you think about somebody having to do a job where the same task has so much variability.
Yeah.
I mean, they're stressed. I'm sure they can't show it to you, but I'm sure
Yeah.
it's like tough to, they're practicing on oranges. And I know nowadays they're practicing on dummies and models, but
Yeah.
there is something to say about somebody who can, with pretty decent accuracy, hit a tiny vein and draw blood,
Yeah.
most of the time on the first try.
I've been told that they use the needles that they use with children normally because that's the like you shouldn't even feel this.
Right.
And I don't, but when I make sure I say, okay, I just want you to know this is how I react. I want you to be able to be in control. I need you to drive this train and get me over the finish line. And so they do. And sometimes I do have to lay down, but I appreciate all of that additional information. So typically, let's talk about, and then we're going to be wrapping up here too. Actually, no, we are. We're going to go ahead and do this. So, what is the best mentoring advice that you want to share with our listeners about the future?
So, my leader, Trish Idris, she recently gave me some advice that I thought was, it was the first time I'd ever heard it from anybody. But she said that sometimes when you get to the next level in your career, you have to identify the things that are important to leave behind.
Yeah.
And I think that there are a couple different ways to think about that. And to be perfectly honest, until recently, I think I've been thinking about it the wrong way. I think the wrong way to think about it is that the things that have made you successful, or the things that you've added to who you are at your core over time, that you would need to forget about those types of
Mm-hmm.
things, which means that you'd have to alter your character. And I don't believe that that's what she was talking about. I think that the way I look at it now is that there are ways to do things
Mm-hmm.
that may work one way depending on the level that you're at and the people that you deal with
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis. And then when you get to another level, there's a learning curve that naturally occurs, because let's say everybody at that, you're now dealing with people that are all at that level. It may
Mm-hmm.
not be that you are dealing with your subordinates as often. So I know that in video production, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always day in and day out dealing with my subordinates the most.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally I deal with clients, with key stakeholders, but for the most part it's 90% dealing with the team. There is a level that you get to where you are now interfacing with colleagues that are at your level, and the way that you spoke, the way that you presented information may need to change, where it was really in the weeds here and you had to go into great detail because you're
Yeah.
almost in teaching mode. Well, now you're in giving high level overview mode, because everybody is pretty much on the same page coming into the conversation. So you don't have to say as much. You need to be more concise, and you need to think about what each person might ask you and be prepared to answer that, versus you're probably not going to get any hard questions from a team that you're teaching.
Right.
So those, I think that's what she was talking about, where your approach to communication, your approach to how to accomplish goals might need to change based on the level that you're at. And it's just because your environment has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great advice. I think that no matter how high you climb,
Mm-hmm.
there are always things to learn. And as long as your character and your core has been built, and you have core values that you stay true to, I think that that can always be your true north and your foundation. And then just kind of making tweaks to be as successful as possible in the new environment you're in.
I love that. So, how can our listeners contact you? We always give a LinkedIn,
Sure.
so we've got that. Anything else?
I have a website, enricomarcellino.com. It's a comprehensive overview of the things that I've done in the video space, and also some other creative things that I'm into.
Is it the
Um,
cards?
no cards on there. I do enjoy making greeting cards, but those are specific to people that I'm making them for, and they get to
Right.
enjoy those. But no, I think that that's a good place to see, kind of who I am
Yeah.
and what I'm interested in. But LinkedIn is the best place to connect.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the extra step that you took about coming out here just so we could go and record this episode. I re-record it just so our listeners know, because I know I'm not quite happy with how it was turning out, and it was my fault because I wasn't on camera and I didn't want to have people just having to stare always at you, just like while you were in listening mode and just hear
Sure.
my voice. Anyway, it's significant, and it just is a testimony to your kindness and your patience to make sure that I felt that the quality was there. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I hope your listeners enjoy it.
Oh, I'm sure they will. You're right. This was even better than the first one. So thank you. We want to thank our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and thank you to our video production and editing team. Gavin Staley is our video editor, and music is by Sophie Lloyd. The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Employers for Change, helping hiring teams to recruit and upskill their intern talent and employees. Learn more about Employers for Change at www.e4c.tech and become a member to reduce employer bias and improve company culture through head and heart smart recruiting and learning. Subscribe to the Intern Whisperer today and show your support by sharing our show, tagging a friend to listen, and leaving us comments. You can find the Intern Whisperer podcast on Employers for Change YouTube channel or streaming from your favorite podcast channel.